morning, everybody. Oh, that's a lovely good morning response. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you again. Welcome to day 2 of the 50 Plus Festival. We're happy to have you here. Let's start the day off in a good way by recognizing and acknowledging the land we're on. So Toronto Metropolitan University is built upon the Dish with One Spoon territory, and the Dish with One Spoon Treaty is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to protect the territory and the land. And all subsequent Indigenous nations, newcomers, settlers are invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. One thing that I love to share about the teachings of the Dish with One Spoon Treaty is the symbol that the land is the dish, and we only have one spoon to take from it and to share. And so the teachings show us, hopefully, that we will take only what we need with this one spoon, share the spoon, keep it clean, and leave some for future generations. So I hope we can take that and move forward with our sharing today with each other. And TMU is dedicated and committed to truth and reconciliation and repairing damages and wrongs that were done. So if you want to find out more of this work, you can go online. We have information on the website. But thank you very much. And I'm going to pass it off to Director of Community Engagement here at Toronto Metropolitan University, Paula Green, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning and welcome back to those of you who are returning for day 2 of 4. And for those of you joining us for the first time, welcome to the 50 Plus Festival. This is a 4-day festival that we will have. 2 of the days are in person. Yesterday we had our first day in person, and today is the last of the in-person events. And then tomorrow we will switch to online. So again, welcome. We have some amazing speakers and presenters here today, and so we ask you please, as a courtesy to the speakers, that you turn off your cell phones, or at least put it on mute, so that it's not disturbing to others. I'll be brief with my remarks this morning. I want to thank the team responsible for putting together this event, starting with Clara McBride, who is the manager of Kronos 50 Plus, and her consul, as in Mena Karavata. Many of you may have spoken to her or may have received an email from her. Mena is our program coordinator, and they have put together this amazing event. This is after COVID, this is the second year that we're coming back after COVID. This event, or this festival, began many years ago in 2009 as an arts-based type festival. We want to thank all of the people who have contributed to making our festival a success, and for all the events that we're having today. Today we will have Baycrest, the team from Baycrest who's sitting over here, and we'll be speaking to you in a few minutes, as well as we will be showcasing some of our coursework, as in our 50 Plus singers will regale us a little bit later on today. So please stick around. I also want to thank all of the internal stakeholders as well, who have been really instrumental in making this a success. Our team from marketing, who have also helped to pull all of our speakers and events together. I want to thank them. So again, hoping you have a fun and enjoyable day for day 2 of the festival, and do join us online for the remainder of the events, which will be tomorrow, Wednesday, and also on Thursday. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kathy Shilton.
And I'm Elizabeth Friesen.
And we're happy to see some faces from yesterday and many new attendees here today at day 2 of the 50 Plus Festival.
So let's jump right into our first session for the day, Defy Dementia, empowering you to reduce your dementia risk. We will start with our panel discussion, and we will have a Q&A afterwards. And at 11:30, we'll have a chance to visit all of the incredible booths down the hall, so don't worry, you will get a break.
But first, here is some background on our accomplished panelists. Dr. Alison Schooler is the Sandra A. Rotman Chair in Cognitive Neuroscience at Baycrest Rockman Research Institute and the President and Chief Scientist at the Baycrest Academy for Research and Education and at the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation, CABHI. She is a professor at U of T and McMaster Universities. Her foundational research uses behavioral and neuroimaging approaches to understand perception, cognition, and the brain. Her clinical and translational research aims to develop methods to prevent, detect, and treat age-related sensory and cognitive decline. Dr. Schooler has won numerous national and international awards for research, teaching, and leadership, including serving as the country's first Canada Research Chair in Cognitive Neuroscience, and recently being named one of WXN's Top 100 Most Powerful Women in Canada in 2019. She is also bringing you some exciting news about a new large donation in the field. Dr. Schooler.
Dr. Tricia Wu is a geriatrician and professor of medicine at McMaster University. Originally from Guelph, Ontario, she completed her medical school and geriatric medicine residency at the University of Toronto. She has an interest in medical education and particularly in interprofessional learning. She is a member of the Jarrus Center for Aging Research at McMaster. And finally, Ron Valeno is an advocate for dementia, caregiving, aging, and research communities. He was a caregiver to his father, who lived with Alzheimer's for over 10 years. Ron is the co-chair of AgeWell's Older Adult and Caregiver Advisory Committee and received their Honorary Fellows Award for 2020. He is an advisor, presenter, and coach for numerous groups across Canada, such as Alzheimer and Dementia Societies, Healthcare Excellence Canada, and the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence. Over to you, Candace.
Is this on? No. All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We're really excited to see such a great crowd. And there's actually a few familiar faces I see from some previous events that we've held. So special thanks for coming out yet again. Have a seat. What we're going to do just to get started is give you a little bit of background about Defy Dementia. But before I do, thank you for mentioning this transformative gift that was just announced today by the Slate Family Foundation. $30 million for fighting dementia. And Baycrest is one of the recipients. The National Institute of Aging here at Toronto Metropolitan University is another. Alzheimer's Society, CAMH, Sunnybrook, Belmont House. Did I forget anybody? I hope not. Oh, EGAL. So it's a broad group of people. We're all working together to be able to help you defy dementia. And this is one of the kinds of programs that has been funded. So I want to just say a heartfelt thanks to the Slate Foundation for that gift. And it's going to make a huge difference for all of you, but for people all across Ontario and across Canada and around the world. So thank you again to the Slates for that. So Defy Dementia is a project that we started at Baycrest with the support of the Public Health Agency of Canada. And what I'll talk about today is a little bit of background about what is dementia, what is the population, and how does the prevalence work, risk factors. We're going to have a really nice Q&A, initially discussion with the panel. Then we're going to have some interactive elements for you to get your brains and your bodies moving. And then we will open it up for the Q&A. So first of all, what is dementia? Dementia is not a single thing. And people often will think dementia and Alzheimer's are the same thing. But dementia is an umbrella term that we use to describe a range of different kinds of neurocognitive disorders, Alzheimer's being the most common of those, but there are others, including frontotemporal dementia, vascular dementia, Lewy body, Parkinson's dementia. There's actually HIV-related dementia, and many, many others. So when you hear dementia, it really is this umbrella term for all of those kinds of things. And what's really interesting is often people don't have just one of these. And so there's no such thing usually as a pure Alzheimer's case or a pure case for another. People will have a mixture of these, and they often will have other kinds of comorbidities, whether it's depression, whether it's blood pressure issues, whether it's heart conditions. So when we're thinking about someone who has dementia, there is a saying that goes, you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia, because everybody is different. And that's one of the things we really want to be getting across in our messaging, is that we are trying to do what we're calling at Baycrest precision aging. So you've heard about precision medicine. What we're trying to do is use precision medicine approaches to do for aging and brain health what precision medicine has done for, say, cancer, right, or for heart disease. We want to see a world in the next 50 years where no more people are being diagnosed with dementia, nobody is moving into long-term care because of dementia, and nobody is dying from dementia. It's a very high goal, but we feel like if we don't aim high, we're not going to get there. So that's what we're aiming to do. And what we're talking about today is mostly in the realm of this dementia prevention, because if we can prevent dementia by even just 5 years or delay its onset, we can reduce the incidence of it by 50%, which is going to be a really important thing for us. Because when you look at the numbers of cases that we're expecting to see, from where we are roughly now, at just about 750,000 people in Canada living with dementia, you can see that by the year 2050, we're expected to get to almost 2 million. 1.75 million people are expected to be living with dementia by that time. So imagine if we could do something to just cut that number in half, right? It would increase people's quality of life. It would improve our health systems. It would just make society a much, much better place. So at an individual level, at a community level, it would be huge if we could do whatever we can to reduce people's dementia risk. And what we wanted to ask you first when we're starting out, just to get a sense of who's in this audience. First, before we go to this Menti code, you can use the QR code there with your phone to get connected to it. And you can use the code, it'll ask you for code. The code number is at the top there. When you get there, it'll ask you to answer this question: what lifestyle factors do you think contribute to developing dementia? And so we'd like to see what you're thinking. But in the meantime, while you're doing that, can I get a show of hands? You don't have to say necessarily like, you know, which category you fall into, but who has either experienced dementia themselves by having it or has been a caregiver of a loved one with dementia? Okay. Who knows somebody who has had dementia? Who thinks if you haven't already been a caregiver, you're going to be a caregiver at some point? Right? So almost every single hand went up for one or more of these questions, right? So this is an issue that's going to affect each and every one of us. So let's go ahead and see what you think in terms of what we can do. What are the risk factors that's making you more likely to end up in one or more of those categories? What's more likely to give you head you down the path of dementia? So are people able to type in responses for this? Should we be seeing it live or?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you?
Hit submit at the bottom.
Hit submit at the bottom.
And you don't have to finish all 12.
All right. Food, exercise, smoking, sedentary, isolation, bad diet, genes, physical fitness, family history. And so what this is doing is the more people put in one of these particular words, the bigger it gets. Isolation, social interaction, family history, genes, eating patterns, low level of education. So it's a very knowledgeable group. And lack of sleep. I think we're seeing most of them coming on here, loneliness. And one of the things that's really interesting, we'll talk a little bit more about this later, is that some of these, like isolation and loneliness, people weren't even thinking about that 10 years ago, right? So we're going to come back to this, and some of those sorts of things that you think are impacts on your lifestyle are shown here. This is just Ontario data, so you can see Ontario is actually an older province compared to the rest of Canada. That means that this dementia health crisis is going to be hitting us even harder. And some of the other things that are also going to be impacting us are not so much the drinking, obesity, and smoking, but physical activity. If you look at that, we are way, way lower. on average in terms of physical activity than people in other provinces. And as we'll talk, it's a really critical risk factor for us to be considering. So one of the things that we want to be doing is talking about all of these different kinds of risk factors. This is not a complete list. This is a list from one of the latest summaries of the Lancet report that talks about what are the lifestyle factors and other kinds of factors that can change your likelihood of developing dementia. And we're going to talk about these and also some others. There are some that people mentioned, for example, genes. That was in the list that you put out there. It turns out that, and we can talk a lot more about this, it turns out that genes are not actually the most critical factor. But people often think, oh, my grandma or my grandpa had dementia, so I'm going to get it too. But it doesn't necessarily work that way. Some of the things I didn't actually see on that list, although it might have flown by, are age and sex. So women are more likely to have dementia than men, and it's not just because they live longer. And as you're older, age is actually the biggest predictor of dementia, right? So those are all things you can't change, at least not right now. You can't change your genes, right? There are some things that we can change, and those are the kind of things that y'all were mentioning in that mental slide. So your education, your physical health, right? So whether you've got high blood pressure, whether you are overweight, et cetera, if you have hearing loss, traumatic brain injury, and then also things that we can very, very easily control, like smoking and exercise and sleep and diet and all the sorts of things that you mentioned. There are other factors like depression, which, again, related to mental health issues. They can often be confused with one another, actually, so it's really important to get these things checked out. And then there are some really sort of surprising ones. As I mentioned, no one was talking about loneliness and social isolation before. Now they are. How many people knew 5 years ago that air pollution can increase your risk for dementia? How many people knew that before today? Right? So if you listen to our podcast, you would know that. It's one of these things where some of the things that we were doing during pandemic, wearing the masks, are actually helpful for us to reduce our dementia risk because we won't be breathing in as much air pollution, for example. So these are the kind of things that we really want to make sure people are aware of so they can take control of their own lives to reduce their own dementia risk. So what you'll see in the next slide is this program that we've put on. We've been running it since March of 2023. And Roseanne is one of the brain children behind this, so thank you so much, Roseanne, for all of your hard work. And we have a number of other Baycrest and Cabby folks. If you want to raise your hands, people who are also involved in it, thank you to all of you, the team. Defy Dementia, as I said, was originally funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada and is now continuing to be funded through the Slate Foundation donation. And Jay Ingram and I are the co-hosts of a podcast. And we also have co-voiced all of our short minute videos. So we have podcasts, we have minute videos, we have infographics, and we have a website and written information because we recognize that different people get information in different ways. So we're trying to hit every single way that we can reach it. So for example, my mom, who I don't know if she's watching or not, but my mom has never listened to a single podcast. We're a Webby Award-nominated podcast. Even when she heard that, she's like, I don't like podcasts. So she will watch the 1-minute videos because it's like only 1 minute out of her life, and she can get that same information. My dad doesn't like the videos, but he does listen to the podcast. So we really did this so that both my parents would get information in different ways. But people, whatever you like, and sometimes you can get the same information in these different what we call modalities, and it gets into your brain more. So it's reinforcing. So if you want to go here, this is a message from Jay, who could not join us today. He's in Calgary, but he sent a little message for all of you. So here's Jay.
Hello, all of you at the corner of Yonge and Dundas in Toronto. I'm actually in Calgary, but you know what? No matter where you are, no matter where I am, I like to find a place in a city where you can do a lot of the great healthy things that we talk about on Defy Dementia. So I'm here on the Riverwalk in Calgary, First thing you can see is lots of people exercising on bikes, on scooters, walking. Restaurants right across the square from me. If you want to go up 2 blocks, there's the beautiful Calgary Central Library. So there's a supermarket too. You can go and get brightly colored vegetables and fruits. So it's sort of a game I play. Find places where you can really keep your brain healthy. Hope you have a great day. Bye.
Thank you, Jay. He is amazing to work with, and if you miss his voice from Quirks and Quarks and the Daily Planet, you can hear him on all of our podcasts and our videos. So far, we have released 12 different episodes. Each of the episodes, for the most part, focuses on a specific risk factor. And in general, this is not always true, but in general, the way that we run the podcast is we have a guest with lived experience, and then we have a scientist who's listened to what the person with lived experience says and then responds to it and tells us a little bit about how does that risk factor impact the brain and what can you do to decrease your own dementia risk. Some of the people with lived experience are people who are actually living with dementia and talking about how it has affected their lives, what they have done to reduce the impact on themselves. So for example, in our episode 2, Loneliness, Myrna Norman from British Columbia, who was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia. When she was first diagnosed, she was told she had 5 years to live. And as you can imagine, she went into kind of a deep depression, became completely isolated, and then realized that was just making it even worse. And so in her words, she burst out of her cocoon, and she started her own social club for people living with dementia and caregivers. And this is now 15 years after her diagnosis, and I can tell you she is not gone. She is a ball of fire. If you listen to the episode, you'll see what we mean. She is probably one of the most lively, exciting people I've ever met. And so I think that's a wonderful story. We have in other cases people like our sensory loss, people who are struggling with issues, and in sleep, people who maybe don't sleep as well as they could or have hearing loss and how they're dealing with it. We also have people who are just really great examples of goals, I'll put it that way. So in our exercise episode, we have one of my all-time sheroes, Ernestine Shepherd. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Granny Six-Pack. She has a very well-deserved name. You can Google her. Just Google Granny Six-Pack or Ernestine Shepherd. And she is, I think she was 87 when we interviewed her. She still works out at the gym. She trains people 3 times a week. She walks 15,000 steps a day. She's in the Guinness Book of World Records as one of the world's oldest champion female bodybuilders. And she didn't start bodybuilding, lifting weights, until she was in her 50s. So I say she's one of my sheroes because she's a great example of how you're never too old. We always say you're never too young or too old to start to take charge of your life. So each of these episodes, you can get information. There's a couple other different ones. Our New Year's resolution is a little bit different. If you go to the website, what you'll see is, in addition to the podcast, we have these very short 1-minute animated videos, and this is an example of one.
We know there are many risk factors for dementia that we can manage, such as sleep, diet, and cognitive engagement. All are important, but where should you start?
First, choose a risk factor that you need to address and feel confident it could change. Find activities and strategies that you enjoy or want to try.
Consider your strengths and weaknesses so that you can enjoy the changes you make to decrease your dementia risk.
This can be as simple as going to bed at a consistent time to improve your sleep, or play a board game with a friend for cognitive and social engagement.
Remember, be kind to yourself. Change can be difficult. There are benefits to tackling multiple risk factors, but improving even one can decrease your dementia risk.
So most of the episodes, we have these little 1-minute videos that give you sort of a snippet of what are the key facts from the podcast, and you can dive a little bit deeper. We also have for visual learners these infographics. This is from the very first episode we did, which talks a little bit more about what is dementia and how hearing loss and vision loss can be risk factors. And then importantly, there's always a how can you take action part, because it's not enough to say your diet is a risk factor. We want to arm you with techniques that you can take home, easy things that you can do. So we're not going to say go out and everyone become an Ernestine Shepherd, try to walk 15 to 20,000 steps a day, train in the gym, 3 times a week and get in the Guinness Book of World Records. Probably, maybe some of you can do that, but probably out of reach for many people. But we can say, park a little bit further from the supermarket, or if you live on the 30th floor and you want to take the stairs, get off at the 29th floor, take 1 flight up. Genius. So little things that we can do to improve our lives. We also have everything in English and in French, so that it's truly accessible in both languages. We're working right now, again, with the support of the slates to be able to translate into additional languages as well. And you can tune in basically wherever you get your podcasts, so Apple Podcasts or Spotify, anywhere. And if you don't normally listen to podcasts, you can just go to our website, which is defydementia.org. And when you're there, you can get all the podcasts, you can get all the infographics, you can get all of the videos and more. And I want to now ask our panelists to join us in a discussion. So they've already been introduced, Dr. Tricia Wu and Ron Blano. Tricia actually was the scientific expert guest on our most recent podcast, which was focused on genetics. Ron has been a podcast guest on our other podcast, the CABI Community of Innovation, and he's been a longtime partner of CABI, and as he said, also a caregiver. And I just want to say thank you for joining us here today. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you for the invitation.
Ron, I wonder first if you can tell us just a little bit about your history as a caregiver, what you learned from it, and then I'll ask Tricia if you can respond to what he said, what stands out for you.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up here in Scarborough. Anyone from Scarborough? Hey, there's always a crowd in Scarborough. I was up the road Scarborough. And my parents also grew up in Scarborough. So Dad was diagnosed back in 2007, passed away at home in 2018. Similar to Myrna's story, okay, he was told he only had 2 to 3 years. We got him to 10 years. And a lot of that had to do with a lot of work from the caregiver, okay? So my goal was to just make sure he lived his life, okay? So just get through your life, do what you want to do, and we're going to support you. Was that easy? If anyone's a caregiver here, any caregivers here? Yeah. So you know that it's challenging, and that wasn't the easiest thing. But we got through it. There's a lot that we're going to talk about. So I'll leave it for there, but that's pretty much the journey for us. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Ron, for sharing that. I also have family members that have been affected by dementia. I've been fortunate enough not to be the primary caregiver, but certainly a supporting person. And the thing that really strikes me with Ron's little snippet there is that it is a marathon. It is a journey. It's not a sprint. And that's one thing that we often tell people in clinic is to prep for it as you would a marathon with preparation, with breaks, and being aware that this is a journey that you and your loved one are going on.
Yeah, it is interesting. I recently experienced a family health emergency where I became the primary caregiver just for a very short time. And even over, 2 weeks or something, I thought, oh my gosh, I understand what Ron's talking about now, because I didn't have my own life anymore, right? And I was pretty isolated because, what can you share with people, what can you not? Can you talk a little bit more about what it is about being a caregiver? First of all, we hear the statistic, people may or may not know this, but people who are caregivers can be up to 6 times, of someone living with dementia, can be up to 6 times more likely to develop dementia themselves than people who are not caregivers of folks with dementia. And that's an amazing statistic. And it's not because dementia is contagious, right? So why is it?
Yeah. Ron, or do you want me?
Yeah, well, you can't sneeze on someone and then they're going to have dementia, like something like that. No, it is something that is stressful. Okay, that's an easy answer. But how you take care of yourself is a big challenge. So there's 2 parts. There's my dad with dementia, and then there's the caregiver. Okay, those are two pieces. I'm going to throw a third part. There's the dyad. Okay, that's both of us together. For my family, there's also mom. Okay, and there's also a cat, Lucky. I'll leave Lucky later in the story, but just so you know, I'm an only child. I was the favorite until Lucky came about, and then Lucky passed away after 20 years. But yeah, as a caregiver, the biggest one that I had issues with was time, the time variable. Okay. So if I was still caregiving today, I might not be here. I might have to say, hey, I got to go actually right now. I had to leave events, leave, even for work. A lot of people have work. They leave their jobs. Okay?
Yes.
So the challenge, time is a big one because we all have the same amount of time, 24 hours. But for a caregiver, 5 minutes is a big deal. Okay? That's a big deal for us. Okay? Also during that time, what's happening in here? Okay? So that energy that it takes to caregive in the mind is kind of heavy, okay, when you really get into the serious stuff. Took a while. I felt like I was Superman at the beginning. I could do this, I could help Dad, and then eventually I can't. So I kind of needed other people. So I talked about superheroes. You need other superheroes on your team. That could be healthcare, that could be the doctor, that could be your friends, your neighbors. So that could also be tools and technologies, which we'll talk about later. Okay,
Absolutely. I think one thing that I've actually learned is I'm in the middle of my life, and I'm finding that people are not just caregiving for one person. It's not just one parent. Sometimes it's both parents. Sometimes it's parents and children or adolescents. And so you're getting sandwiched in, or you're getting demands from everywhere, from all sides. And oftentimes when you're on that wheel of doing tasks and managing and trying to manage your time, the person that gets left out is the caregiver. You know, that person, and you don't look after your own health. Your own health habits sometimes go out the window or are deprioritized. You put everybody else first. But then the problem then becomes if something happens to you, if you get sick with even something small as, you know, a bad cold and you're out of commission, all of those people that are leaning on you then also, you know, feel that stress and strain. So it becomes very difficult.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard, isn't it, for people to realize that they shouldn't just be Superman or Superwoman, right? So I think of my aunt who was the caregiver for my grandmother, and also my cousin unfortunately passed away, and so my aunt was also the caregiver for my cousin's daughter. So sandwich generation, but with like a 10-year-old and a 90-year-old. You know, for her, it took her a long time to realize that actually my grandmother would do better if she didn't stay home all the time, but she went into, say, a day program to have, you know, which gave my aunt more time for herself. Is that a challenge that you see?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one of the things we talk about with caregivers is to don't be shy, ask for help. And that can be informal help from friends, from neighbors, from other relatives, or from formal supports. So governmental supports, healthcare supports, et cetera, and also to accept help, to ask and to accept. You know, if we offer you things. I often tell our patients, you know, don't get excited. Our government doesn't have a lot of money. It's not like there's going to be a lot of help, but anything they do offer, the answer is yes, thank you.
I'm even going to start from the definition of what a caregiver is. A lot of people don't even know they're caregivers yet. Okay? I was just a son, okay, just doing the work, helping out, but you don't realize that as time goes on, hey, I'm actually offering caring actions. Okay? And again, I come from a Filipino background. Our nature is you just take care of the parents, okay? But eventually you start realizing this is more than just supporting. This is actually doctor appointments, looking at pill medications, trying to figure out what are these medications, what do we do next, figuring out, okay, we can't take care of him as best as we could, okay? So that shifted, and then I realized, hey, I'm a caregiver. You don't have to use that word, okay? There's care partners. You're just the son, the daughter, you know, the spouse. You don't have to use the caregiver word. That's my opinion. But are you offering care? Are you caring more? So that's what I pay attention to. Not really the label. Words do matter to me. But for now, it's just that caring piece. Once you realize that, there's going to come a point where you're going to say, hey, I can't do this all. And you're going to need some support.
Yeah. I want to turn a little bit now to this genetics question because, you know, you are a son and a caregiver, so you might have increased risk because you've been a caregiver, but what about his genetic risk? People will often say, well, as I said before, my grandma, my grandpa, my mom, my dad had dementia, so I'm going to get it too. What do you say to that?
Yeah, for the vast majority of people, when they say their grandmother or grandfather or even their parents have had it, I ask them, what age did they get it at? Because if you remember, in the first part of this conversation, we talked about age, increasing age as your number one risk factor. So if, your loved one had it in their 70s, in their 80s, or in their 90s, that genetic link is much less strong than if you'd said, oh, everyone in my family got it at age 40, I would set up in it, because that's a different kind of ballgame and a different level of genetic risk. If they got it and their older age.
Young onset.
Yeah, the young onset, absolutely. So for most people, it is what we call late onset. Increasing age is your number one risk factor. And we tend to look a lot more at lifestyle and preventative things for the caregivers at that point, as opposed to looking at genetic testing and genetic interventions.
And what are some of the kind of lifestyle changes that you can make?
A lot of the things have already been mentioned in your Defying podcast initial part. First is an acknowledgement that, there are lifestyle, just reflect onto your own life and say, what are the areas that I can improve on? And the common things are the diet and the exercise. That's what I'm working on right now for myself, actually. And doing small things, just as the podcast suggested. For me, I have a tendency to eat lunch at my desk and surf the internet and do emails. That is actually not good, nor is it healthy. So now I have a colleague from the office next door who comes to my office and says, now we are going for a walk.
That's so great.
Yes, I don't really have a choice in the matter. I am dragged away from my desk and I go for a walk around the park. I am voluntold, but it's good for me, right? So those are small, thank you. Thank you. My exercise buddy will be very appreciative of this shout out. But it's small things. It's small things and making small adjustments and doing it with people, doing it as a team, really, because I have no willpower and I would just surf the internet if I had no choice.
Yeah, and that's, Ron, to you, I mean, this issue of, like, you've got a lunch buddy who's forcing you to live more healthy, but it's the same thing. I mean, so I'm more likely to go to the gym if I'm going with someone. In your opinion, how does this social interaction play into it?
So I'm a social person, so that's easy for me, actually. So my dad was diagnosed at 68, so just to give that number. I want to go past that and go to 100, whatever that is, and not worry about it. But I don't know. Talk to me when I'm 68 years old, and we'll see what happens at that point, okay? But I'm doing exactly the same thing. Diet, nutrition are big parts of it, okay? Even when I was a caregiver, okay, I had to force myself to schedule time. Even though I had to caregive, I said, I'm going to put it in the calendar. This is my time, okay? Put things in the calendar. Short term, medium term, and long term. You may not get it, but you're ahead by just even doing that habit. So a lot of this is even habit developing. There's a lot of great habit apps out there. Okay, so something to consider. But I would also use technology where I would be going for the walk, but I could check up on my dad on my phone. Okay, so remote monitoring was one of the things I would do. I would also have remote caregivers as well. Okay, this was back like 10 years ago. Okay, so I'd be using that kind of thing. So I had to bring in technology to help support my ability to take care of myself. Okay?
Yeah. What about technology that can be used now to help people who are living with dementia?
Oh yeah, there's a lot out there. Of course, again, a lot of habit apps. There's a lot of games to work the brain.
We'll show you one we developed.
I was going to say, so with Baycrest, CABI, the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation, which, Allison, you lead, a lot of innovations, a lot of technologies, but I also want to take that word a little bit down. People get scared with the term technology. Some of you are not technology people, you don't like it. Although I remind people, your toilet is technology. If you've used the toilet today, it's low-tech technology, otherwise you're going to the lake or going outdoors, okay? But look at them as tools. Okay, they're tools to help you get forward. If we didn't have this microphone, people in the back would not hear us, okay? But this is a tool, that's all it is. It's a tool to amplify our voices, okay? So CABI, I'm not sure what app you're gonna be suggesting here, but CABI works with a lot of innovators with all these technologies, and they help a lot, so.
Yeah. And we do actually have a smart toilet in CABI. This is
That's exciting.
Although you don't need a smart toilet to do your number 1 and 2, okay? Yeah,
no, it's interesting because what this toilet does is it uses, this is going to sound odd, but it uses machine vision, but not just looking at what comes out, not where it's coming from. But it uses the machine vision to be able to diagnose, is somebody dehydrated? Is somebody at risk for a urinary tract infection and so on? So, for example, in long-term care homes, this is a huge risk for people, and it can cause a lot of issues. So rather than have to take samples all the time, these toilets can actually do that now. So,
Wow,
yeah.
that's very exciting. I had no idea.
So that piece is also about being proactive. Okay, so getting some of your data or some of these things ahead of time to say, hey, if you don't change this, it might get worse, right? So sometimes you want to catch things earlier. The healthcare system, in my opinion, we're usually reactive. We deal with it afterwards, but I want to be proactive. So that's where.
Absolutely agree. Because our healthcare system, as designed, is reactive. We're not very proactive or preventative, and that's why we're at events such as here and doing some of the education. Because what I'm finding is actually people want to know. Yeah. They've seen their parents and loved ones go through difficult times. We know the population's aging, and studies have shown that most people want to age in place. Thank you very much. That's what they want: good quality of life, longer life, and I think that's where the education kind of comes in and being proactive. And now we know more and more what we do in midlife echoes into late life.
Yes. Echo. We want to show you some examples of things you can do right now to help your brain stay fresh. Before I do, I want to mention one more thing around technology, because I mentioned before hearing loss is one of the risk factors for dementia. And it turns out that if you have hearing loss and you get hearing aids, it actually can decrease your risk for dementia. We don't know exactly why, right? It could be because you're more likely to be engaged in social interaction. It could be that it's less what we call cognitive load.
Yeah, there's multiple theories as to why. Some people, if you have untreated hearing loss, you just withdraw. So social withdrawal, you just don't want to talk to anybody because it's too much work. Some other people postulate that your brain is taking so much time and so much bandwidth, so to speak, to understand what is being, said, that they don't actually have that extra bandwidth to actually do other things, and that leads to the cognitive decline. So there's many theories as to why.
But we know there's action you can take.
Oh, yeah.
The first step really is making sure that you are checking your hearing. And sometimes it's just too big a barrier, especially if you're a caregiver, to make an appointment and go see an audiologist. But I want to let you know, it's being presented out here, right?
It's one of our booths.
One of our booths. You can all get your hearing tested for free in just like 10 seconds, basically. And if not, you don't do it here, you can go online and do it from home. Baycrest has a free hearing test. And you can get information about that at one of the booths. And this is one of these things where, again, bringing my parents into it, I visited them maybe about a year ago. They're in Boston, and my parents have been married for over 60 years, right? I thought they were going to get divorced. They were at each other because my mother was like, Robert, you never listen to me. You never do what I tell you. My dad was like, Susan, you always say the wrong thing. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you guys cannot hear each other. And they said, no. Then they started yelling at me. And I said, hey, I swear to you, I said, hey, we have this free hearing test. And I actually I have some mild hearing loss. So I took it and I showed them, here's how easy it is to do. And I'm going to do it. And now you're going to do it too. And guess what? My mom does have hearing aids now, thank goodness. My parents are staying together, hopefully for another 60 years. But it just took that little bit to get them over the hump so that they could see, yes, I do have an issue. And it's perfectly normal. As we get older, our vision gets worse. As we get older, our hearing gets worse. I see lots of people wearing glasses. People don't have an issue wearing glasses. Why do we have an issue with hearing aids? If it's going to help us live our lives better, why not?
Absolutely.
Yeah. A game that we wanted to mention, I think some of you have already got to the QR code here. We actually developed a game with these fellows in Ottawa. How many people play Wordle? Okay. How many of you know that there is a Canadian version of Wordle called Knuckle? It's so fun. It's basically, so you learned something today.
I always learn.
It's a Canadian version of Wordle where the words are Canadian-ish. And then there's a little fact that comes up afterward. My starting word for Wordle is always plate, because that's what WordleBot tells me to do. But I always use maple for knuckle, because good Canadian word. And they then created a Canadian version of Sudoku. How many people have played Sudoku before? Okay. My mother loves Wordle. She hates Sudoku because Sudoku has numbers and she doesn't think of herself as a numbers person. She likes words. Well, they made a picture version of Sudoku with Canadian icons. So it's got, instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, it has, in the Canadian version, it had a polar bear and a jar of maple syrup and a hockey stick, right? And of course, a maple leaf. And we saw this as we were doing our Defy Dementia program, which had a lot of these sort of pictures that were representing different kinds of risk factors. And we said, hey, let's have a brain health edition of this version. And that's what is being shown on the screen here. And Roseanne is showing how you can actually use the website. If you go to the website, we can give information on it. It's at the Defy Dementia table as well. You can go, this is a 9x9, you can go to a 6x6 or a 4x4. Every single day, there are 5 in each of these categories, from absolute beginner, really easy, to very, very challenging. But instead of having numbers 1 through 9, what you can see here is you've got images. If you go to the 9x9 first, I'll just show them. On the bottom, you can see icons that are representing the different risk factors. So from left to right, we've got cognitive engagement, exercise, sleep. We put the Canadian flag in because go Canada. Social interaction, some blueberries for nutrition, hearing, vision, and air pollution. And if you go to the 4x4 up on the bottom top right there, this one, the beginner is the beginner easy. These are actually easy enough for even people's grandchildren to play. So you can play multi-generationally. The way you play it is, if you know, each quadrant here has to have one of each of those 4, and each line up and sideways has to have one of each 4. So you click on it, and then you click on the icon on the bottom, and it fills it in. So she's going to we're going to test Roseanne's brain, see how fast she can do this. There is a timer on the top. You can see you're at 30 seconds now. How fast can she go? And yay, and then all these Canadian maple leaves come flying out. You can then from there get to Defy Dementia, you can play another, and so on. And I love it because it's really engaging, and it's a meta kind of a game, because you're learning about how to decrease your dementia risk while you're decreasing your dementia risk.
Levels, I tell you.
Levels. And the other thing we want to do is engage people in exercise. And so for that, we'd like to invite the Jeros dance folks up to lead us in a dance presentation. And they are coming down now. While they're coming down, let me ask you something about exercise. How important is exercise, and if you have other risk factors, can it sort of counterbalance them?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, exercise is one of those ones that checks many different boxes, right? Because number one, you're actually getting some exercise, so you're improving your circulation, right? Number two, you're also improving your risk for falling. You're lowering your risk for falling, because one of the things is, as you get older, you also do sometimes pick up risk factors for falling. And if you fall and hit your head, that's obviously not very good for brain health, right? And three, it also helps with mood, right? Yes. So if you're exercising, your release of endorphins. So remember, mood is very important in reducing your stress. And then the last thing is you also sleep better if you're doing some more exercise. So you're checking multiple boxes with one thing. And then if you do it like me, it's also social. So you're not doing it by yourself.
Yeah. So one little dance, like the one we're going to do here, can help you in many, many, many different ways.
Yeah, so it's super efficient. If you're into the efficiency and you want to do as many boxes as possible with one thing, this is what you do.
So that's counterintuitive, because you're saying exercise is good for lazy people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just movement. Let's not say exercise.
We're just liking our dance instructor up. But come on over. I'd like to introduce Mona and Tashan.
Yay.
They are our backup dancers.
We're also
I'm
her backup
going to
dancers.
invite Allison, Trisha, and Ron to also be Mrs. Gupta's backup dancers, and collectively, all of you can be group backup dancers. I'm going to turn it over to Momina, maybe just to do a little bit of an introduction of who Jairus is, and then Mrs. Gupta will be with us shortly.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Mona, and this is Kishan. So we're both from the Jairus Center for Aging Research in Hamilton, and we created this program called Jairus Dance. It's an evidence-based dance program for older adults looking to improve their brain health and mobility. And we actually did this program at a Hamilton temple, the Hindu Samaj temple, and we had a lot of fun because we were actually able to incorporate their culture. So we incorporated Bollywood songs as part of our dance routines, and we wanted to do a live demonstration with you today. And so we have Mrs. Gupta, who's the so she will be leading one of the dances today, and we're going to be backup. I really encourage you, even while you're seated, to participate. It's just going to be fun that way. And I'll let Mrs. Gupta say a little bit of an intro as well.
Hello everyone. As Momina said, my name is Kiran Gupta. I am from Hindu Samaj Hamilton Seniors Wellness Group. So today we will be doing Jairus Foundation 1 that focuses on moving your body forward and backward, but with confidence. So there are 4 steps, very easy one. We picked the Foundation 1. So each step we will be doing 8 times, and I'll show you the step first. So we will do 4 steps sitting, then standing. So I think you can do sitting twice. And then the same steps, 1 time sitting, 1 time standing, we will do with Bollywood music. I picked a song from my era, old Bollywood song, but it's really a nice one. Music has universal language. And you will see the difference when you do the exercise without music, and then Jairus do the exercise with music. You will see lots of difference how you feel. Thank you, and we are going to start now. Yeah, so. We do sitting. We always start from this side. So please do it together with me. So my right side, your left side. So first step is tapping on the spot. Okay, first step is tapping on the spot. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Next one, tapping forward. I think they hooked me with 2 microphones, so I don't know. Yeah. Should we do it again or it's fine? Do it again? Okay. Okay, the first step is tapping on the spot. So just tapping on the spot. Okay, let's do it together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. Next step, tapping forward. Start with your left foot, mine right. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, reaching forward and reaching up. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Next step, clapping in a square. Up, up, down, down. 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 Okay, so the same 4 steps we do standing. People who do not want to stand up, they can do sitting again.
If people can't stand, just stay seated.
Okay, so the same. First step is tapping on the spot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Next one, can somebody tell me which one is the next one? Tapping forward, right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Next one, reaching forward and reaching up. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Next one, clapping in a scale, right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now it's fun part. We do with the music, the same, sitting and then standing. Okay, music please. हो रही है काम की तो मुड़ के देख लेगा इस नजर ये तो हर दो दिया तेरे नाम की चला हूँ मैं गली गली बाहर की बस एक छुप की बस एक निगाह प्यार की पुकारता चला हूँ मैं मेरी जुदा जो जमीन से उतर के आ गई जमीन पे मेरी हवा हो रहा है राज हसीन पे करता चला हूँ गली गली हार के प्यार की पुकारता
Thank you so much, Mrs. Gupta, and the whole Juras team. Thank you. Another round of applause for the team here. And while we were dancing, it reminded me that, you know, dance and games, those are not the only things you can do to improve your brain health. We are honored to have some friends here from the Shaw Festival, so I want to raise your hands and say welcome. Theater is another excellent way that you can engage your brain, either whether it's going and watching the amazing shows that they've got there, or taking part in some of the wonderful educational programs that you guys have. And in our episode on cognitive engagement, actually, the woman who was our guest with lived experience there, she talked especially about how the arts played a role. And you might think, well, what's the arts got to do with cognitive engagement? But she started painting. But she didn't just paint, she learned about all of the painting. So it was really a deep learning. And we're going to have an upcoming episode on music, same kind of thing. And I was thinking about the wonderful work that y'all do. I tried to take part in community theater at least once every couple of years back in Hamilton. I was just reminiscing about how when you're doing a musical, you have to remember not just all of the words, where you're supposed to be on stage at any given time, how you're interacting with people, all of the dance moves and the songs. It's like you talk about it all in one.
Oh, yes. It just connects on so many different levels, and particularly music. We do know that music activates and uses different neural pathways for remembering things. There's a lot of programs, even for persons with cognitive impairment and with dementia, that involve music. So it's wonderful. And it's good for the heart and the soul, isn't it?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, so for me, it was my dad who loved Frank Sinatra. Okay, so Frank Sinatra was the song that would relax him. Okay, and then there are other songs that I would play that would amp him up, let's say. If he was kind of lazy and I wanted him to kind of dance, so we would play music just like now, right? So that's a big deal. I hang out with a lot of art and music therapists as well. So the work they do, not just for my dad with dementia, but also for the caregivers as well, or just for family members and friends. That's a big deal. So I really believe that creativity piece, even though there's a lot of creativity there, there's also a lot of skill that you have to develop for some of it as well. So that's a big deal, yeah.
Great. We want to open it up to all of you for your questions. So Roseanne has a microphone. Any questions?
Hey, we're coming up. Sorry. This is my workout.
Thank you
so much. It's a very good presentation and we have information. And the question rises from more, from my side is sensory part of dementia. So I have sensory loss since 1991 and I'm wearing hearing aids. But with the aging, I also find what you are saying by experience. The point is that we are aging and now the research is going on and we have using a lot of technical devices, particularly the young youth. So how we can match this, the young people 40 to 45 or below who are coming again in the aging, we can prevent something or we can educate how we can cope with myself with these kind of questions, because you are treating us as a senior defying dementia, but the dementia is coming in the young generation also. So particularly on a sensory loss, because sensory loss, I also feel the speech difficulty sometimes also with the sensory loss, and people consider it as low IQ when we are in a social life. So isolation comes because of the loss and lack of concentration. When we are listening, sometimes you speak a bit slowly or something. I have not heard much, but I will go through your website. The question is that on sensory loss, how we can cope with or prevent that dementia. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, I mean, one of the things, I'll start and then I want to turn over to y'all. I mean, so people these days, especially with headphones and all the music you can listen to, technology has its pros and cons. So there is a real risk, isn't there, for people who are listening to a lot of loud music? Or
Yep, absolutely. And we do know that loud sounds very close to your ear for long periods of time is probably not the best for hearing loss, later in life. But on the flip side of it, there are a lot of technological advances that are allowing people with aging-related hear loss to benefit from that tech. So it's a double-edged sword.
So when it comes to technology, there's the good side and there's the bad side as well, okay? So even as we age, so technology can actually be a bad thing because there's a lot of, let's say, abuse that's going to happen, okay, with the aging population. There's bad people out there. When it comes to the sensory piece, in my world, it benefited that sometimes we have to kind of give my dad a lot more sound, let's say, amplify it. Sometimes it's a takeaway sound. Sometimes he's too sensitive to even, let's say, lighting. So it's different for everyone, okay? Just as Dr. Allison said here, it's like everyone you meet will have different needs. But sensory is a big one when it comes to aging and dementia. One of the things for me when it comes to sensory, especially environments, is what do we feed ourselves? What is that environment? Are there pictures, for example, that would make my dad smile? Okay, the auditory sound, okay, the temperature. Okay. I don't have an answer. I'm not a doctor here to say, well, how do we fix it? But can we create an environment, okay, to help support with sensory challenges? So, yeah.
Another thing is we talk about music, and I don't know if there's any musicians in the audience, but it used to be even sort of, like the big, rock star bands, they wouldn't wear any hearing aids when they were performing their big concerts. They do now. If you're a drummer especially, but even if you're in a band or you're playing just by yourself, be sure that you're wearing hearing protection because that's really critical. And if Alice Cooper can wear hearing protection, you can too.
My friend Natalie on the other side is we're going to alternate sides. So Natalie, a question over there, and then I'll move back over here.
Can you elaborate a little bit on how education levels, risk factors go with dementia?
Sure. You want to talk a little more about the role of education and dementia?
Absolutely. So we do know that education, so the more education you have, the more cognitive reserve you have. It's like putting money into the bank. You have more in the bank, more ways to achieve things. So the more years of formal education you have, the better it is. The other sorts of things is learning specific things. So learning new languages. So if you are bilingual and you use both languages, so every time you look at a microphone or an Apple or something and you're able to use both languages, that is also protective because your brain is building extra little pathways and highways to access that information. I've read that trilingual and polyglot it's too much, but 2 is good. So you don't have to go to 3, but if you happen to have more than one and you use both, that's actually really protective. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Sure. I want to add one more thing here. So not from that education side, but from the stigma. Okay, so getting educated as to what other people are saying when it comes to aging and dementia. You get to choose what you're going to receive. Okay, many people just accept whatever it is. You might think of us as the experts because we're here. You can disagree with us as well. Okay, but there's also a lot of people out there that kind of have a different narrative around aging, and it's not the best. Okay, sometimes even so, dementia. Sometimes a lot of people say someone's suffering with dementia right away. I'm not a fan of that word unless the family decides that I'm going to use that. Okay, but you'll see it always in the media. When my dad used to go missing, person suffering with dementia is missing in Scarborough, let's say. Okay? You don't have to accept that. Okay, so also get educated on how it's being communicated out there as well.
Yeah, and the last thing I would say is, again, it's a little bit potentially complicated. I mean, you mentioned just with some of these other risk factors like hearing loss.
Yep.
There was a recent study looking at a new way of defining poverty in Canada and in other parts of the world, not necessarily just in terms of how much money or income does someone have, but what important elements of life are they not able to have. And it turns out in that sort of analysis, so for example, do you have at least one pair of regular shoes and one pair of winter shoes? Because in Canada, most parts of Canada, that's important. It turns out that people who are more deprived of these important things for living are also more likely to have lower levels of education. So as you have more and more levels of education, your income goes up, your ability to have access to daily necessities increases. So there could be these kinds of correlations as well. And the last thing I just want to say is it's never too late to start learning new things. As we said, our friend in the cognitive engagement episode, she started learning how to do painting in her 60s or 70s, right? And it's changed her life. So even if people didn't have as much education earlier on, you can still continue learning throughout your life.
So I have a related question on the topic of music. Does your research in a specific way deal with sort of the ability of music to have a positive benefit with regard to memory recall? And is that like a specific part of the research that you're undertaking?
Yeah, I don't particularly do research on that. I do play the drums, and I would recommend that with hearing protection for everybody. It's like the best instrument in the world because you're getting physical activity while you're doing the other things. But we do have people at Baycrest who that is what they specialize in, is looking at the effects of music on the brain. And as was mentioned, it is another one like language learning. Musicians tend to have sort of a protection. But I think that beyond just that cognitive ability, so how music can help you remember things better and sort of decrease your dementia risk, there is the other issue around related to emotion. I think, did you want to speak to that?
So there's enough studies out there with music. So to keep it simple, music does affect all of us. It doesn't matter whether it's dementia. It's just, I could pick a song that some of you are going to say, yes, I know that song. It's going to bring back memories. Okay? I always pay attention to the triggers, whether that's music, video, reading something, that triggers the emotions. Okay? Because a lot of this is emotionally related. Okay, so when you think of, as I say, Frank Sinatra for my dad, okay, he remembered singing it to some kind of dance in the Philippines, whatever that is. The other thing I would play for him, which I think a lot of you know, you'll know this show, Mr. Bean. Okay, if you know Mr. Bean. Okay, so right away, everyone's with a smile. There's an emotion, just me saying that, but you're visualizing that. So I'm a fan of anything with sensory triggers. Okay, but you get to choose what you can watch as well. You can flip the channel. You don't have to watch the news. Okay, so music is a big one. Yes.
Absolutely.
Can I jump in? I was going to say, for anyone who, if the panelists don't mind.
Yep.
But Singwell, Dr. Good and Dr. Frank Russo are going to be this afternoon. That's the event this afternoon. And they look specifically at music and singing on brain health. So I just wanted to plug that with that question.
Yeah.
We're going to go to the other side.
it on? Yeah. Okay. Personal frustration that all electronic control devices are rectangular, black with buttons, and that the hearing aid remote, the telephone, and the TV television remote all look exactly the same. And if you hold them up to the ear, only one will work. And the other is a question actually about motivation and what being a kid keeper later in life can help with motivation. So I noticed with my mom and her brother, both of them highly motivated people. My uncle, somebody who was in business, and as soon as he couldn't recognize numbers, his motivation went almost to zero. And my mom, who was the kid keeper for the family, keeping everybody connected, making sure that any event, everybody got a call, is the one whose motivation remains, even though there's much less motivation.
So it sounded like you have a team there. You have a team, right? So for me, again, we talked about it earlier, try not to do it by yourself, okay? Get through life with others. Even if you don't have others at the moment, go find them. And sometimes they're not your family members, just to let you know, okay? They could be. Some of the best team members on my team was the coffee shop where my dad used to go to, the restaurant he would go to, the church, okay? So you want to find that and get them on your team to support you throughout your life. It's always good to find those champions that you can say, what do we need? What are we missing on this team here? Okay? Could that be a coach as well? Okay? Sometimes you can get a coach. So that is important to have team members that play different roles. And again, sometimes you don't have to expect it from some specific people just because they're family. You got to find it outside there. So that's a big deal.
Absolutely. And motivation will wax and wane. You could be having a great month and someone else that's usually very highly motivated and energetic is having a bad month. So you just sort of step in and people take turns. People take turns. If there are concerns regarding motivation and mood specifically, that may be something that might need to be looked at by a healthcare professional. If it's something
and with respect to the black boxes, having just a cover of a different color on the phone. And if you want something for free and you don't even want to pay for the cover, we have a lot of stickers that say mind matters and all sorts of things. Stick one of those on your phone. It'll help you tell the difference between all of those. So little.
I just want to say we do have a table with caregiving resources outside as well. So come on and visit us afterwards. Next question over here.
Thank you very much. I'm just curious. I don't know how are these. How are these diseases diagnosed? I know there's tests, obviously there's tests, but is it something we can see in the brain if there's a brain scan? Or is it just, I don't know, how are they diagnosed? And how many times, I'm curious, are errors made in the diagnosis?
Here's a good question.
Yeah, sure. Perfect, thank you. It was like I planted it.
So thank you. So diagnosis of dementia is a complicated diagnosis because you need to see the person in front of you. So you get what we call the history, the story from the person themselves, the story from the people that live with them to kind of get a sense of what's the story, what's the trajectory. We often perform a physical exam to look for any physical findings of a stroke or Parkinson's. We also may be doing memory testing. We may also be doing some brain imaging, as you pointed out, or sometimes blood work. And you put all of those constellations of symptoms together and all of that data into a big mix. And at this point, this is how we make the diagnosis. Obviously, the best diagnosis would be once someone has passed and we're actually looking at the brain. But right now, that's not very feasible, perhaps down the line. And there are newer and newer techniques, and people are diagnosing things earlier and earlier now because of increases in technology and sophistication in markers, biomarkers, neuroimaging. The science is really quite dazzling, so it may change in a few years, but this is where we're at today.
Yeah, and I would just add, CABI, the Center for Aging Brain Health Innovation, we've supported a number of companies that are in that early diagnostic space. And the reason we think it's so important, we actually do research at the Rotman Research Institute at Baycrest Academy as well. The reason we think it's so important is right now, there really aren't any drugs that can cure dementia. There are some drugs that seem to have some ability to help a little bit if you catch things early enough. But that early diagnosis is really key. And like in my lab, one of the things we are looking at is, for example, can we create basically sort of like games that test your vision in different ways that could tell someone that they are on the path toward dementia years before there's any memory problems, because we think that it probably is affecting the eyes before it affects the memory centers in the brain. And I think that's another really important thing to keep in mind which we didn't really cover, is that it's not always memory. That's the first symptom. So memory loss is what people think of when they think of dementia. But do you want to say just a bit about more other things people should look out for?
So there can be other areas of brain thinking or function that we can they're what they call social cognition. So their behavior is a bit different. So the very prim and proper accountant is now telling inappropriate jokes. Some people will have visual spatial problems where they have trouble wayfinding or may see things that other people don't see. Some people have just changes related to a stroke. So they're fine and then they happen to have a stroke for some reason and that affects part of their brain and then that's the trick that changes things. So there's many different areas that can be affected. Some people's speech, just the speech in rare cases, and that's the first sort of sign. So it's tricky. And emotion. Emotional ability or changes in emotion sometimes can also be your first symptom. So it's not one size fits all. So right now the diagnostic criteria is from the DSM, so that's the diagnostic manual that is used by our psychiatry colleagues, and they set the criteria. And right now it's a mixture of different things you have to have in order to check all the boxes to meet the criteria. But as you've heard, the criteria and ways of looking for dementia will be changing in the future, in the near future and in the medium to long-term future. Because what we're finding is that by the time you come to me in a clinic and on pen and paper tests and the story, sometimes people have lost a significant amount of brain function, and so the medications and treatments are less effective. So the thought is, can we move things upstream before you've lost, brain cells and function?
So that's a good example. So by the time we got to the doctor, it was like 2-3 years later.
Yeah.
Okay, so my dad probably already had dementia 3 years earlier. And it's for us to start picking up signs. We had signs, but I didn't know what they were. I didn't know that was related to dementia. I shared a story. My dad started getting aggressive. He started accusing people of things. Okay, where's my money? I had no idea those were some symptoms and patterns that someone might have dementia. So it was about 3 years later. So it's also the skill for the family to kind of start paying attention to each other when things change. So, yeah.
The last thing, I think you're going to have a question over there or over there, but before that question, just to say, the sorts of things that we've been talking about that can decrease your dementia risk can also slow the progression of the disease in many cases. So if you catch it early enough again, and you can get someone, eating well, exercising, social engagement, that can slow the progression as well. So, Nat.
Going to Natalie over there.
Hi, good morning. My question is about hearing loss, and also I wrote it down in case my memory isn't working. And thank you, Ron, for noticing my hand up. The thing is that I know people in my family and my friends that have had hearing loss, and I see the problem not as going to get your hearing tested. It's wearing the darn aids, and the hearing aids are expensive. The batteries are out of this world, costly. They're uncomfortable. And I'm wondering if, I see new technologies, but, the new technologies that you may see on the media, I don't know how well they work. And as I said, they're so expensive that, once you buy into a technology, you're kind of stuck with it. So I was wondering if you had any suggestions, any recommendations to people about, what is on the market or what could be coming on the market that would make wearing your hearing aids a lot easier than what they've been.
Ron, do you want to?
Okay, so before we go to the hearing aid thing, I'm just talking about technology here.
Yeah.
Okay, so technology is something that needs to be tried. You can't just read about it. I always tell people to ask for the return policy. What is this return policy? Try it out, okay? But I know so I'm not the one who pushes technology. People think that I talk about technology all the time, but I say it's a tool. And you have to look at it as an investment. You have to do the calculation and say, will I get a better return on my life if I invest in this toilet, okay, or not? Okay? You can't tell until you try it. So see what the return policy is, try it out, get other people that did you try this? Okay? So that's how you have to approach tools and technology. And then you have to look and say, is that $1,000 investment for the next 5 years worth it? Okay. We had a cat litter machine for 10 years. That cost $1,000 the first year. Over the 10 years, that's like $100 a year, less than $10 a month. My mom had to not worry about the litter for many years. Okay? And that saved her about 2 hours a week. That was a good investment. Okay? But people don't look that way, but you have to. But I don't know the technologies, if you know any out there.
Yeah, so I mean, I've heard this many times in clinic. People complain about the hearing aids, they're small and fiddly. A lot of people put it in a Kleenex somewhere for safekeeping and then throw the Kleenex out, thereby losing all of that money. Yes, I've heard all of these stories. And it is tricky, So I echo Ron's sort of thing. Have a good conversation with the audiologist, particularly if people are prone to losing things or have difficulty with fine movements. Other things that people can try, because I'm not fussy how we get to resolving the hearing loss, I just want it resolved. There are cheap and cheerful sort of things, voice amplifiers, which are sort of what we call pocket talkers that are available for several $100s. They look like 80s style Walkman. You put the little thing on there and the little thing, and it's not attractive enough that anyone would want to steal it, and it's big enough that you won't lose it. And the upfront cost is much cheaper, so it might be worth a try. Some clinics may actually have some samples or things that you can actually try in clinic. We actually have some that we use in our clinic, and people will try it, and then I say, okay, if you like this, look online, see what's available. There are. And as more and more people are experiencing hearing loss in middle and late life, I think the technologies will change. And I think as a consumer, you should make your views known.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We're starting to see a move away from getting smaller and smaller to getting bigger and bigger, because so many people now, as we were saying before, younger folks are walking around with things hanging out of their ears all the time. So if you have hearing aids that just look like they're AirPods, you know, everyone wears them anyway, right? They're harder to lose.
Exactly.
And we are seeing on the technology front, we are seeing good advances in terms of smart hearing aids. They're not at the point now where they're as readily available and cheap enough, but it will head that way. So that what I mean by that is my uncle, for example, has hearing aids, and he only wears them when he's alone because when other people are around, it gets too noisy. And so when he needs them at a restaurant, he takes them out because it's too much clanking of silverware. And so what the smart hearing aids do is they amplify just the sounds that you want and just where you're looking, for example. So that's coming along, and I think that as more people get over the stigma, I think that will help as well. But yeah, we have a long way to go for sure.
Over to Natalie. I just wanted to mention the Canadian Hearing Society is an excellent resource that you have hearing counselors that will help people try on hearing aids, teach them how to use them. So that's a very excellent resource that hearing aids can offer you, but their services and support is. So there's usually a Canadian Hearing Society in every city or municipality.
And a Baycrest audiologist is here today. Sylvia Chichinowski is in one of our classrooms. So if you need to talk to her, come find us and we'll put you in touch with Sylvia. But next question over here. I'm also going to say, there is a wealth of questions. Clara has said that if people would like, we can continue past 11:30. I want to be respectful of people's time. So I don't know, we're going to keep going for a couple more minutes. And then our guests often stay for a little bit, so you can come on down and ask some additional questions. But we just want to say thank you so much for everybody's engagement. Next question right here.
Are there any tests that healthy people can take to see what the chances are of developing dementia, such as brain imaging, MRI? Would you recommend people get that? And also would the medical system, doctors be willing to give such a test, like brain imaging, on someone who does not have dementia, but maybe has risk factors or a family member?
Yeah. So at Baycrest, another project that was funded by the Slate Foundation is our Kimmel Family Center for Brain Health and Wellness, which is focused on exactly that kind of thing. Each person who comes in has a very deep dementia assessment to figure out, there's blood tests, there's imaging, there's lifestyle factors, all of these different things, and you get an overall assessment of what is your risk. It's not as refined as I think you're hoping for. That is the research that we do right now at Baycrest to try to figure out how do we get into that more refined, specific, targeted approach, but this is the first step in that. And then what the program is doing is saying for each individual, what is your personal brain health prescription? What is your personal brain health prescription, and what is yours? Because it'll be different for each of us, depending on what your lifestyle is, your risk factors, medications you take. So people are looking at all of those things now. We don't right now have a definitive early test.
No, absolutely. At this point, we don't. And if you go to an average clinician, average family doctor, or specialist even, it is not likely that you will receive that kind of risk profile. But specialty areas where they're doing a lot of research, because this is the up-and-coming field, preventative neurology is actually what they're saying. The American Association of Neurologists says they would like to establish a call to action working group for prevention of a lot of these neurological conditions. So it's coming. Yeah. It's coming. We're not there yet.
Our group is working in this area of predictive neuroscience for precision aging. That's our thing. But the one thing I would encourage everybody to do is, just as you get regular eye checkups, you get regular heart checkups, and so on, get a regular brain checkup. And it doesn't have to be imaging. That's expensive right now. There are tools coming out, but we have actually out there our brain health assessment tool from Cognicity, free. And you can all get it done here today yourselves. What it will do is give you a sense of what sort of state is your brain in right now, and how do you compare to other people of your age. And I take this test every 6 months just to sort of check in, so I have a good baseline, so that if I see I'm going down, then that's setting off some alarm bells. You might go up and down a little bit, but I check in on my brain every 6 months using the Cognicity test, and I would encourage everyone to do that.
Come and find it. We'll put you in the classroom because it's available on site. We have room for 3 more questions, and as for Clara, we're going to get you through.
Thank you. This is not a question, comment. First of all, I'm looking around and I realize I'm among friends. My dad had dementia. As you said, I was the son and the caretaker. And I need to tell you a very quick story. It'll take about a minute. I found that it was one of the most amazing times in my life to be able to care for my father. And I need to tell you this one thing. There were all these miracle moments, as you know, where a person is in and out of lucidity with dementia. But one night, right before he made his transition, and he was in a care facility, I was there, and as happened, he was in his wheelchair and he wheeled himself out into the hallway where people sat. And all of a sudden, a woman came along, also with dementia, also in a wheelchair. And I was sitting next to my dad, and I could tell that this woman wanted me gone. So I went to the end of the hall and watched the following. My father's here, the lady is here, and all of a sudden, my father takes his hand and puts it over the hand of the lady next to him. 2 dementia patients. And he held on. And I realized at that moment, one essential thing in my life, which I always want to hold to my last breath, is that my father mattered to the last moment of his life 2 weeks later. Boy, did he matter. And when he touched that woman's hand, I realized this: romance is never gone. It's never gone. That was one of the most beautiful moments of my life, and I want to say I am so happy to be here at this moment, because this is the first time I've had a chance to share with others who are going through the same kind of thing. So we're all together, and I thank you.
Your first name?
Oh, my first name?
Yes.
My first name is Jay,
Jay.
J-A-Y. And my dad, to me, how do I put this, was a miracle maker in my life. Right from the beginning, when I was a little kid, learning to ride a bike, he encouraged it. He made me the most magnificent lemonade stand of any kid could possibly have. So I was blessed.
Yes.
And at the end, I was able to look at him. One night, I was with him, and I had this moment. He was totally out of it, I thought, but he wasn't. Because at one moment, he looked at me and he said, "You're here. This is a miracle." He was the miracle.
Jay, what's your dad's name also?
I'm sorry?
Your dad's name. What's his
Morris.
name? Yeah.
M-O-R-R-I-S.
So Jay and Morris, okay, so for me, dementia is part of our life, but it's my dad. It's Morris's that's more important. Him as a human being is what should dominate, not dementia. It's part of his life, yes, but I want that story about Morris, okay, who he is, who you are as Jay. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, caregivers need to share that narrative, those stories. Many ugly stories, yes, but there's also many beautiful gifts that come with this. Okay, it's hard for some people to see, but that's a gift. Okay, so Morris is more important about what he did than whatever this other thing was, dementia. Okay, so thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
My question following that is really quite mundane. But one of the things that I'm puzzled by and I hear from my friends is that how do we actually get diagnosed? First of all, some people don't have a family doctor. What kind of specialist should diagnose? I've heard some people are seen by neurologists, some people are seen by geriatricians. I find this whole thing very puzzling as to getting to the right profession.
Absolutely. So
it is a tricky thing because many different specialties can make that, and family doctors can also as well. The bonus about family medicine is that they often know you. They know if there's been a change. They know your history, right? So that's the ace in their pocket. But you're right, not everyone has access to a family doctor, which is very difficult. You can also go through referral processes. So there are referrals to specialists. So I'm a geriatrician, so I look after geriatric medicine. There are geriatric psychiatrists that also do that, so specialists in older adult mental health. There are neurologists, as you've already alluded to. There are many different specialties that can. A lot of it depends on who's available, because numbers of people that are available will vary based on location, whether you're urban, whether you're rural or remote. And so it is tricky. We are trying to get more people trained up and to feel comfortable. At our school and in many schools, we try to encourage everyone in family medicine to do rotation so they get that comfort level, because there will never be enough specialists, and they can't be everywhere.
I think we have one more question, then I'm going to ask each of you for a closing word.
Is being forgetful a sign of dementia or just like a sign of aging?
Me again? Okay. So it depends on what you mean by forgetful. Did you just forget somebody's name once? Or are you forgetting who your spouse is? There's gradations. If you forgot the grocery list once, that's forgivable. It's when it is persistent and you're forgetting things on a more regular basis, and it's to the point where it's impacting your life. If you don't remember, the name of your grandchild, that would be a big miss. Yeah. If you didn't know the name of someone that you saw once 20 years ago as a classmate, that's a little bit different.
But if you, just on the grandchild thing, I don't want people to worry, because in my family anyway, we often will say, Ryan, Elaine, Archie, you'll go through 6 names before you get to the one. That's not dementia necessarily.
No, that's not. And particularly my grandmother had dozens of grandchildren, so it was a lot more forgivable.
Yes. So it's the nature of it.
It's the nature of it, the persistence of it, and the progressive nature. It's getting worse. It's changing, and to the point where it actually impacts how you're doing things. If you're an accountant and all of a sudden you're not able to do your taxes, that's something of interest,
So just to finish up, I just would like to ask each of you if you have one tip for people, your favorite tip, what can people do to decrease their dementia risk or slow the progression of the disease if they've been diagnosed? Ron, we'll start with you.
Okay, so for me, it's something that Baycrest likes to say, fear no age. Okay, so the emotion, I like talking about the emotions. Okay, I prefer that if we can get through life with little fear and more confidence as we age. Okay, and to build up confidence, a lot of it has to do with just connecting with people. I believe in making connections, breaking bread, having a meal, having a coffee with anybody. Okay, people that you like, preferably. Okay, okay. They don't have to be the same age as you. Okay, look for younger ones, look for older ones to hang out with. Okay, if you can schedule that, as I said in the calendar, at least once or twice a month, look forward to that. You may not have those meals, but please try your best to put it in the calendar, schedule a meal, reach out to one of us, we'll have a meal, or we'll figure something out, okay? And go out and just connect with people. So that's my tip.
Okay. Hard to top. I would say find joy. And what I mean by that is find things that are positive feelings, find things that engage you intellectually, emotionally, find joyful events with people in your life. Because that has so many knockoff effects. If you look at the blue zones, those famous blue zones that you hear of people living to 100, a lot of them, they have purpose, they have joy. And that's the thing that you can't get in a medicine bottle or anything else. That's something that we have to do ourselves. So find joy in whatever it is that you're doing and whoever you're with.
Yeah, and I would just add, never stop learning. You're all here today because that's really important. Our brains are not sort of set at birth and then fall apart. Our brains can continue to grow and evolve as we get older. I always like to say you can teach an older brain new tricks, and you're all here doing that, and I think that's wonderful. The more we engage in lifelong learning, the better it is for everything that we do. So just thank you to our terrific panel for being here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the dancers, the wonderful dance. Thank you, Roseanne, for your support on slides. And thank you most importantly to all of you and obviously to TMU for hosting this amazing event. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
We actually have some flyers and some free online versions if you want to check that out as well, if you had fun. Thank you, Mrs. Gupta and team.
All very much for that. I learned so much. And just as you were talking about some of the using the arts as a preventative tool, I just have to share something personal for Elizabeth and I. We're your MCs today, but 14 years ago for me and 8 years ago for Elizabeth, we discovered TMU's Act 2 Studio. And this is in the programs for 50 plus. It's all about theater for people our age. I've learned writing. We've learned writing, acting, directing. It's a wonderful social community. There's some of our colleagues here. It sparks joy every day. We take those classes. We've been students I've been 14 years doing it. And this year at the Toronto Fringe Festival, we are in a play. This is all the lines of dialogue that we've learned, and we're sharing in the play at Fringe Festival. It's called The Apartment. We have some flyers, but when you're out exploring all the tables and in this next break, before we ask you to be back at 12:20 in the Commons, where you'll have a chef demonstration and a wonderful meal, I just want to encourage you to explore the Act 2 Studio program at TMU because it's fantastic.